dropped back in 2024, and a lot of people, myself included, had a blast with it, finished the story, and maybe ran through a few in-game quests and just slowly stopped playing the game. Life moved on and other games came out. You put it down thinking that you'd come back, and eventually you never really did. Now here comes Endless Ragnarok, a full expansion, new characters, new difficulty, a brand new roguelike mode, and crossplay for the first time across every platform, including the Switch too. And the question a lot of us are asking right now isn't just, is it good? The real question is, should I actually come back to this game? That's what we're going to get into today. Not just a rundown of new features, but an honest answer on who this is actually for, what it delivers, what it doesn't, and whether it's worth your time and money right now in 2026. This is Granblue Relink in this Ragnarok. Let's talk about it. Before we get into the expansion, let me give you 30 seconds of context because I know some of you either never played the base game or barely touched it. Granblue Relink is an action JRPG from Cygames, the studio behind the long-running mobile gacha game Granblue Fantasy. But here's the thing, you don't need to know anything about the mobile game to enjoy Relink. It works as its own standalone experience. You play as either Captain Gran or Jita, leading a crew of Skyfarers on an airship through a world with floating islands, ancient mysteries, and increasingly dangerous enemies. Think of it as Final Fantasy crossed with Monster Hunter, a story campaign up front and then an endgame built around replaying increasingly difficult quests with a roster of variety different playable characters to master. The base game came out in February 2024 and it hit a 92 positive rating on Steam and genuinely surprised people who weren't already invested in the IP. It was flashy, fast, polished, and it had one of the better feeling action combat systems of that year. The problem was the endgame ran out of things to do pretty fast for a hardcore crowd, and the casual crowd rolled credits and moved on. Endless Ragnarok launched in July 9th, 2026 and is available as an upgrade pack if you already own Relink or as a complete bundle if you're coming in fresh. It's available on PS5, PlayStation 4, PC, and for the first time Nintendo Switch 2. And it's been sitting in the 86th percentile on OpenCritic at launch, which is a strong score for a paid expansion. But now let's get into what it actually is. The narrative of Endless Ragnarok picks up directly after the events of the base game. The captain and the crew have already dealt with the main threat, Lilith, and things should be winding down. But of course they don't, because mysterious portals called the Chaos Gates have started tearing open across the Zigrande Sky Dome, and pouring out of them are creatures called Maglielle, essentially supercharged version of enemies you've already fought, but more powerful, angrier, new movesets, and behind all of it lurks Beelzebub, the ultimate villain of the Granblue universe, making his first proper appearance in Relink. And here's my honest opinion of the story. It's fine, it's just okay. It does what it needs to do. If you're a dedicated Granblue fan who knows the lore and recognizes the battles up from the mobile game, there's a real payoff here. New characters like Fraux and Fediel have their own vigilante scenes that go deeper into the mythology of the Skydom. For that audience, this stuff lands. For everyone else, the story in Endless Ragnarok is notably thinner than the base game. The base game, whatever its other flaws, function like a proper action movie. There are explorable stages, big set pieces, cutscenes, a campaign that built towards something. Endless Ragnarok strips most of that away. Story progression is now delivered through a brief memory vigilantes that place after you complete the quest milestones. Small scenes, mostly dialogue, and no explorable new zones. The crew that you spent the whole base game with barely shows up for anything meaningful. It's a framing device more than a narrative, and if the story is why you play action RPGs, that's worth knowing going in. The good news is, on the other hand, that nobody is buying Endless Ragnarok for the story, and Crygang clearly knows that, because where the story is thinner, the gameplay content is significantly heavier. Let's start with what is generally the highlight of Endless Ragnarok, and that is the Conflux. The Conflux is the brand new roguelike mode and is doing a lot of work here. It's single play focused, built around a randomized run structures where you pick your path through a series of encounters, combat rooms, mini games, and platforming challenges, mini boss fights that eventually culminate in a final boss to end the run. Between the rooms that you pick for a section of boons and power-ups called auras that stack across the run and dramatically changes how your character performs. Fill those gauges right and you can build into something that generally feels broken in the best possible way. One Dark Hero crew described a run where all their boons were stacked around link time and stun generation, and they hit a state where they can keep enemies permanently stun locked while going absolutely nuclear on them. That kind of snowball potential is where the right combination of random runs turns into something monstrous for one run. It is exactly what makes a good roguelike design feel exciting, and the Conflux gets that right. But here's what's most important for the Conflux for the returning players specifically. It also functions as a catch-up metric. If you dropped Relink after the story and didn't grind the post-launch in-game content, the Conflux gives you a relatively efficient path to get the materials that you need. Damage cap sigils, war elementals, some of the harder to farm upgrades that previously required grinding the same quest dozens of times, the Conflux makes those more accessible faster. It's a quality of life improvement disguised as a new game mode. And it's a smart solution to a real problem the base game had. There are also 5 unlockable cycles within the Conflux, each with a different reward pool and scaling difficulty, which ties the mode back into the main content loop without making it feel isolated. The Conflux is also where a lot of the more unique bosses encounter live. Fights with special mechanics, mid-fight cutscenes, spectacle moments that feel generally distinct from the standard boss rotation. The one criticism worth flagging, the early difficulty of the Conflux is quite slow. Several gamers noticed clearing combat rooms before they even could get to the enemies because their characters were too strong for the opening cycles. If you're going in fully optimized for the base game, expect those first few cycles to feel more like a warm-up than a challenge. The higher cycles significantly scale up though, and that's where the real test lives. It's also worth noting that the Conflux does not support co-op. You're in there alone. For a game that's fundamentally built around multiplayer, that's a deliberate design choice and not everyone is going to love it. Personally, I think it works. The build variety and the risk management feels better as a solo experience, but if you were expecting to run Conflux with friends, that's not available. Outside of the Conflux, the core of what Endless Ragnarok adds to the main quest structure is the chaos difficulty tier, and this is where side games directly address one of the biggest complaints about the base game. It got too easy too fast. Chaos difficulty spikes are generally hard, not in a cheap spiky damage type of way, but in a you need to know what you're doing and you need the right type of build type of way. These are battles of attrition. The Ragnalia enemies, those souped up versions of the familiar foes, have completely new movesets that require active coordination between you and your team. Some of their attacks have specific mechanics that function almost like a MMORPG raid in mechanics, where you need to respond as a team to avoid wipeout scenarios. The early chaos assessment quest pits you against both Theophon and Sandalphon simultaneously in dual boss encounters where they tag in and out based on your performance. Even going in at high levels, that fight is legitimately a wall that will make you reckon with how good your build actually is. Summons and primal bursts are exclusive to chaos difficulty and above, which is a meaningful design decision. It means that the flagship new mechanic, which we'll get into in a moment, is tied to the content that actually challenges you. You earn that by playing in a tier that actually matters. You can't just spam summons through easy content. You earn that by playing in the tier where it matters. The bosses in the chaos difficulty are mostly remixed version of existing fights, and I want to be honest that this is one of the weaker aspects of the expansion. You're fighting reskins. They have new moves, new patterns, and a more aggressive behavior, but the visual identity is familiar. For veterans that have ran these encounters hundreds of times, that familiarity can take some of the edge off. The new mechanics help, but if you are hoping for a completely original boss design, the expansion is light on those. Let's talk about summons because this is one of the more interesting new additions mechanically. Lyra, your crew summoner character who was largely a support presence in the base game, now takes an active role in the combat through the summoning system. As you fight, a 3-bar gauge fills up through link attacks, full burst, and dealing damage. When that gauge has enough charge, you can call a summon into the fight. What makes this interesting is that the summon isn't just a cutscene attack. For most of the summon, you actually take a direct control of them. You play as a summon for a limited time window, dealing as much damage as possible with their specific moveset before the timer runs out. Some summons are simple, burst damage dealers that go in and do their thing and just leave. Others have more complex behaviors like AoE attacks, mobility tools, and mechanics that interact with the enemy's vulnerabilities. The summon gauge is divided into 3 bars, and different summons cost different amounts. A small goblin throwing a bomb costs 1 bar, a massive dragon unleashing a beam costs all 3, and here's a smart wrinkle: using a summon reduces the cost of the next one you call, so the longer a fight goes, the more frequently you can call a summon, which gives extended battles a satisfying ramp up that wasn't present before. You can equip up to 4 summons at once, and each one also provides a massive stat bonus and traits even if they're not active, similar to how weapons and sigil work. This means summons are a part of your build, not just a panic button. You're thinking about which ones to bring into which fights based on your character's kit, the enemy type, and what passive bonuses complement your sigil setup. The one complaint I'll throw out there, the summoning system has some timing quirks and chaotic fights. Faster and more aggressive bosses can make it generally difficult to find the right moment to call a summon without having to get interrupted or wasted. And there are some encounters that don't have consistent break windows, which limits when you can deploy certain summons effectively. The system is good, but it has room to mature. Endless Ragnarok adds 6 new playable characters: Beatrix, Eustace, Gallanza, Maglielle, Fraux, and Fediel. And across those 6, the design quality is generally impressive. The other major addition on the character size is the master traits, and this is the progression system that's going to eat your hours. Here's how it works. Level 100 is still the cap. That hasn't changed, but after you start Endless Ragnarok, content and unlocking the system, you gain access to the 3 separate skill trees per character, each built around a different playstyle: attack focus, defense focus, support focus. You invest mastery points into increasing your master level, which then unlocks points to spend in these trees. Individual traits within each tree range from broad passive boost, raw attack, damage cap percentage, help to extremely character specific abilities that change how core mechanics function. All 3 trees can be active simultaneously. Because the mastery point investment is gated behind the story progression in Endless Ragnarok, you'll be making meaningful choices about where to invest early on. That's a generally smart design, and it creates stakes around the progression without locking you out of the content entirely. The master trait system also addresses the damage cap problem that frustrated a lot of in-game players in the base game. New sigils and passive in Endless Ragnarok makes the damage cap ceiling more manageable, freeing up sigil slots for a build variety that wasn't really possible before. If you're someone who loves digging into character builds and finding optimal setups, the combination of 6 new characters and the master trait system across the entire roster is going to keep you busy for a long time. Quick note on the gear side, since this matters for returning players, Endless Ragnarok introduced new weapon Transcendence, which lets you push your previously awakened weapons past their old limits. Depending on what you invested during the base game, this can make some of your existing best in slot weapons even stronger in the terminus weapons that previously defined the power ceiling. Combined with new sigil introduced through the Chaos Quest and the Conflux, there's a meaningful gear upgrade path through the expansion that doesn't make your prior investment feel wasted. The biggest platform news is that Endless Ragnarok brings full crossplay for the first time in the franchise. PC, PlayStation 5, PS4, Nintendo Switch 2 players can now all play together in online co-op. That's significant for a community because it expands the player pool across every version of the game simultaneously. On Switch 2 specifically, the game runs and looks reasonably good for a game of this visual complexity running on portable hardware, but the frame rate is a real caveat. For most of the time, it's sitting around 30 FPS, which is a noticeable dip in heavier encounters when attacks fill the screen. In dock mode, the situation is similar. It's playable, and for a portable co-op with friends, it's worth it. But if you have the choice between the Switch 2 or a PC, the more powerful platform is the better experience. Let me be really direct here because this is the actual question most people watching this have. If you loved Granblue Fantasy Relink, played the entire game, played the endgame, got your characters to a good place, and you've been waiting for more, this is exactly what you want. Endless Ragnarok delivers more of everything that made Relink work. The combat is the best it's ever been. The chaos difficulty finally gives hardcore player a gentler wall to work against. The Conflux is endlessly replayable in the right way. And the new characters are all generally well designed. For this audience, it's an easy recommendation. If you played through the story and dropped off before digging into the endgame, this is actually a great time to come back. The Conflux catch-up system makes getting up to speed way less painful than it would have been in the base game's grinding structure. Dropping in fresh with access to Beatrix or Eustace immediately gives you a compelling new character to learn, and the master trait system gives you a long-term progression goal that didn't exist before. It might take a few sessions to remember how everything works, but on ramp is better than it was. If you bounced off the game early and never really connected with the combat or the quest loop, this expansion isn't going to change your mind. Endless Ragnarok is built for people who already liked Relink. It doesn't introduce anything fundamentally different about how the game plays. Same core loop, more of it, even harder. If you're completely new to Relink and Endless Ragnarok is your entry point, this is actually a decent argument for this right now. The full bundle is available. Switch 2 has a complete package on day 1, and you'd be jumping in with more content available at launch than anyone had in the original 2024 release. Just know you're gonna need to play through the base game story before any of the expansion content. Granblue Fantasy Relink Endless Ragnarok is a confident, content-rich expansion that does most of what it sets out to do. Cry Games listened to the community and added real challenge through chaos difficulty, gave the Roguelite crowd a genuine replayable mode in the Conflux, and delivered 6 well-designed new characters and overhauled the progression system in a way that extends the life of every character in the roster. The story is thin and mostly forgettable, especially if you're not already invested in the Granblue lore. Some of the boss fights are remixed rather than original. The Conflux has no co-op, and if you never connected with the base game, nothing here is going to convert you over. But if Relink has a place in your gaming memory as something that you enjoyed and put down, this is the reason to pick it back up. It's the version of the game Cry Games clearly wanted to build, and as a package with the base game, it's one of the better action JRPGs offering available right now in 2026. That's the Granblue Fantasy Relink Endless Ragnarok review. Drop a comment below and let me know if you're a returning player or is this your first time in Skydom. I want to know how many people this expansion is actually pulling back in, because I have a feeling it's going to be a lot. And if you're new here, subscribe and stick around. New videos are coming up consistently, and this is the kind of honest, no sponsored content that we do all the time. And I love when YouTube gives me money for just yapping about video games. Come hang out with me live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at 9:30 Eastern time. Link is in the description. The alpha is the name. Until then, stay safe, stay smart, go finish your backlog, and then stay alpha. We'll catch you in the next one.